ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, here to break down for you all Hannibal Season 3, Episode 5, Contorno. So, spoiler alert before we dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be bearing all in this review, because when it comes to the question of whether bowels in or bowels out, it's going to be bowels out. And by bowels, I mean spoilers. I mean the grisly, gritty, visceral, gory details, which we shall be getting into without further ado. So, what a night. What a night to be alive. What a life we lead watching and partaking in this show. And just with every step that we take forward into this season, I am tempted to be overcome with grief at the fact that the cast of Hannibal, of course, as some of you may have heard, has just been released technically as Brian Fuller and company seek a new means of distribution for the show. And all these painful things that are operating on the periphery as we're scrambling in the post-NBC apocalypse. It all pales and all fades away when we get to sit down and divulge in the events at hand. So I have to say, I do find me a lot of bit of pleasure in watching Hannibal Lecter, the man who is ever at the helm and taking the wheel, whether you like it or not, the great master of all marionettes. I mean, this guy who is pulling the strings from every freaking possible angle to see him wrapped up, to see him getting dragged across the floor and, practically sent hurtling to near death is a real good feeling. Considering how the end of season 2 went and the bitter taste that all of that left in my mouth, and I had to chew on that for a good long time until the season came back. So finally, it all comes full circle as Jack Crawford, bereaved, having just lost his wife, having essentially lost everything that he once knew to be true of his own life. Now, the only life that he can find is in taking Hannibal Lecter down, and he certainly makes some big steps toward that end goal. But from what I understand, of course, he's waiting for the real clincher to put the nail in the coffin, officially, that being Will Graham. Because he knows for a fact, as does anybody who knows our beloved Graham Cracker, that he is in hot pursuit, whatever that is going to mean. So Jack Crawford gets some real good hits in there. He gets back at Hannibal for any possible number of things that we have seen him endure at this madman's hands. And whoa, man, is it ever incredible and theatrical and operatic. And I do forget the classical piece that was playing in the backdrop as glass was shattered and this, the palace that Hannibal has essentially built for himself is bit by bit broken down by Jack Crawford throwing his body through cases and smashing the guy up, tearing into him with a freaking hook in his... Oh, that was a sight to behold. I mean, all of that, of course, was led into with Hannibal's like, oh, so, did you get my letter by any chance? Oh, I'm so sorry. And he tries to, of course, go into the means by which Bella died in the previous episode, and that is not going to fly, not by any stretch of the imagination. And for as much as it looks like Hannibal is prepared for this, kind of have to concede, a Jack Crawford untethered is indeed a reckoning force, and I really appreciate the work that Lawrence Fishburne has put into the season. I was hearing a lot of rumors about, he's involved in other projects now and so on and so forth, thereby leading everyone to believe that he was not going to play a major role in the season or might actually possibly be deceased. And he has become such a central and critical character and swoops in just in the nick of time to really do some damage and to get to this revenge ball rolling in a big way. In a very, very big way. So I'll do my best to touch on everything else in the episode, of course, and if there's anything that I happen to neglect or miss, you can yell and scream at me in the kindest way possible if you can manage that. And we'll go from there, Fill up the buffet of the comment section with your delicious thoughts, and we'll feast away, my friends. So, meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, I'll backtrack a little bit to kind of take us to where we began. Will Graham is en route to Italy with Gjeilo, whose name I'm still not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly. I've only heard it spoken once or twice in the show. It hasn't been ingrained into my brain enough yet. But so the two of them are, making their way downtown. Not exactly homebound, but they are bound for Mr. Lecter. And what am I trying to say? I had all these thoughts that just kind of died as I'm thinking of those final 5 minutes that are just wrecking my soul. But yeah, so while it would appear that Will Graham has liberated Gjeilo, and she actually speaks about the manner in which she first met Hannibal Lecter, speaking of his charms and his young cub-like cuteness, but now he's one of the big lions. He's big old Mufasa at this point. But yeah, so there's a lot of cryptic and metaphorical discussions that are exchanged between them as they are on the train from Lithuania. And while, of course, it seems that they are now on the same page, since Will Graham forced her to kill the man who Hannibal had put before her, essentially putting her in captivity, well, things take a slight left turn, and whoopsie-daisy, Will Graham gets a little taste of the violence that he put Gjeilo through, and ends up on the train tracks to follow the magical stag to wherever Lecter may be. Hopefully, maybe, possibly. We'll see how it goes. I mean, if you've seen at least the trailer for next week was not as spoilery as the ones that we've seen previously for this season, I feel like we get the sense that Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter are going to, in person, meet one another again. But yeah, I think that kind of the big takeaway that I had from Gjeilo and Will Graham's exchanges was the fact that, and what she states, is that Will Graham must either kill Hannibal or become Hannibal. And that's kind of interesting to think about. And I think it's something that sort of resonates with all of us who have seen the machinations of Hannibal unfold over time, and we know pretty full well just the horror of which Hannibal is capable and the grotesqueries that he has wrought. We know this so well. And so even though it would seem that his mission to achieve this last intimacy with Hannibal in death, arguably, or it's really hard to pinpoint one single motive, one single goal, the decision versus the choice, and so on and so forth. But it seems that death is the way that things are going, or that's what Gjeilo speaks to him about. But we see that this fixation on violence has very much soured Will Graham in her eyes, And she uses that against him in that final moment, stating that there are other means of persuasion, punctuating that with a kiss, and then the push off the cliff, essentially. I think that what that instant meant was that Will Graham could have persuaded her to free herself from her prison without sacrificing the life of that man in such a horrifying, graphic, and Hannibal-esque way, perhaps, is what she's getting at. But now her motives have become even murkier, because we know that clearly she has been messed with by the master himself. So is she going to attempt to take out Hannibal herself? And is that the reason why she is preaching this gospel of violence back to Will and pushing him from the altar and, you know, back into to ground zero? Or like what does she want in this exactly? Is she one of the multitude that is closing in on him? Does she feel that it is her right to exact this revenge? I mean, Hannibal has arguably imprisoned everyone that he has encountered in some way, which I think is evidenced by the fact that everyone is attempting to kill him, but given the chance, still can't quite make good on that. I mean, when you think about it, technically Jack Crawford could have put a quick end to Hannibal with the level of surprise and upper hand that he gained more and more and more over the course of their fight, but instead chooses to watch Hannibal tumble down stair after stair, or bow to the ground below, which was a glorious moment. I do love that scene where, like, through the viscera and the hanging organs and nastiness, you see the slit where Hannibal is looking up at Jack Crawford as he's hanging from the edge. It's just such a beautiful and fitting taste of your own medicine, or shall we say taste of your own meal kind of moment, which is so good. So marvelous. But yeah, so it's tough to say what exactly is going on right now, but once again, Will has been reunited with the stag that we have encountered on so many occasions, and it is clear that this manifestation of the impossible tie that he shares with Hannibal lingers on and will lead him into the darkness and to whatever is to come. So the question, of course, is who's gonna get to who first? How's it all gonna go down? What is exactly going to be conspired and successfully carried out in this situation? Now, interestingly, of course, if we flip over to what's going on stateside, we've still got Alana Bloom working with Mason Verger, who has a $3 million bounty on the head of Hannibal Lecter. And this is completely kosher with the new Alana Bloom. Now, she has blossomed into a flower of death and revenge. And she's okay with that. I think, as is evidenced by the fierce pallor and the intense bloody reds of her outfits and her makeup, and just her entire demeanor is bent towards a very calculated destruction of Lecter. She desires to be as in control of this situation as possible, which stands in stark contrast to the position that she was in last season. And once again, it's so good to see her getting her new groove on. Although her endeavors did not turn out successfully at the end of this episode. And her wake-up call moment at the last second of trying to warn Ronaldo Pazzi of impending doom ended up as a little reunion between her and her ex-beau. From afar, which getting to hear Mads Mikkelsen utter the lines "awkward moments," I will cherish that for a good long time. But yeah, like the contrast between Alana's cold ferocity and just the perpetual sickness of Mason Verger, just the constant, like, I mean, it certainly doesn't help that half of his face is missing, but he could attempt to present himself in terms of his speech and his manners, attempt to be less of a nasty butt, but he insists upon being the foulest of foul creatures, and yet this is the one with whom Alana has partnered, and it just goes to show that all she needs really is the capital that Mason possesses in order to mobilize her desires and her goals of seeing Hannibal broken down in the perfect way. What Mason, of course, has in mind is a form of revenge that I think mirrors on a more grotesque and caricatured scale the outrage that she feels and that she must satisfy, even if it's through Mason's ends. So a very unlikely partnership between them, of course, but it's been so much fun to see that play out and to see her dodge every disgusting sexual joke that falls from the lipless mouth of Mason. She just takes it all in stride because it's all for the end goal. But unfortunately, all she really gets out of the deal so far is a little tip about the spending habits of Bedelia and a phone call. Just a little chat. to rekindle things if she was needing a little extra fuel for the fire. But yeah, so of course, Pazzi, we all knew the fate that he was going to meet, and it was very exciting this week getting to see one of the most memorable moments from the Hannibal film of years past, which starred, of course, Anthony Hopkins, yada yada yada. You guys know the one. I mean, it seems like every single time that movie is playing on TV, I come in at the evisceration from the church scene, and it's, yeah, so that's kind of become a core memory and reference point for me, which Brian Fuller and his band of Merry Murderous Men presented in such a fabulous way. It was a great watch. I was laughing hysterically, maniacally. It was all just so completely and utterly and absurdly well done. It was all that I wanted, and of course culminated in the epic showdown that I think was, a bit of getting even from previous times. No more bleeding out in the wine cabinet for Jack Crawford. Crawford has got some claws, and he's sunk them deep. I am still amazed that Hannibal was actually able to get up from his fall. I mean, I was ready to see him dragging himself away, but I think one of my favorite scenes in the episode actually was like just that kind of medium long shot looking down from the steeple where Lecter is bathed in the blood of Pazzi, who he just executed in the way of his ancestor, bringing history to life like a good historical curator should. But yeah, just that look of like, I mean, we've seen Hannibal get dirty in the kitchen, in the varying stages where he enacts his shenanigans, but seeing him in a position that clearly he never imagined himself being in just that kind of shock that registers in his perpetually impish and and playful yet regal demeanor. It's just so, you gotta savor it. You gotta savor the flavor of the cannibal caught by surprise. And that I do. I'm going to be using that to season the rest of my week as I prepare for what is to come in the rest of this season. It's really sad that we're almost halfway there. I don't want to not be continuing in this story because things have amped up in such a fabulous way, and I would not want this crazy train to stop, but oh man, boy, do I hope that we hear news within the next year of where Hannibal is going to return. That is all I want. That can that be what I want for Christmas? I'm putting in my order preemptively. Santa Claus. Henceforth, nothing but straight good behavior from me. And, well, you know. Now you know. But, yeah, so much insanity. Very delightful. I had a lot of fun laughing hysterically all by myself in the dark of night watching this episode, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the crap out of it too. So, yeah. We'll see who's gonna meet up when, where, why, and how. I should also comment on the fact that Hannibal and Bedelia's relationship continues to remain very ambiguous. She's almost sort of a commentator on all of the events now. She, more recently, or at least in this episode, she and Hannibal have shared a lot of intimate moments and seem to be conducting themselves even privately as a very romantic couple. But she she continues to look at the broader picture of what's going on around Hannibal, as if continuously trying to perform a reality check and to see what exactly is transpiring. Even though she is on the chessboard that Hannibal Lecter is on, she seems to be viewing things from a more omniscient point of view. Again, I think continuing to maintain some level of control by understanding, by refusing to be blind to things. I mean, certainly, it kind of makes me think about what Gjeilo said earlier about how, when she tells Will that violence is all he knows and understands, we see that with Bedelia, she understands that there are other ways of, I don't know if it's persuasion. I mean, how much of an effect can one exert over Hannibal Lecter? But nonetheless, there seems to be a very intentional nature about what she's doing, even though that is incredibly ambiguous. I think that things with the women in the show are extremely ambiguous, except with Alana at this point. We know exactly what she's after. We know exactly who she has aligned herself with to get what she wants. But as for the other women on the scene, there is much to ponder, and much that I look forward to in the ultimate reunion of Will and Hannibal. So they're certainly both in incredibly vulnerable places, having both been chucked off of their respective things, thrown from a window or from the back of a train. And now all they have is to find one another. So I'm going to wrap this review up, but thank you guys so much for watching. Love it, love it. This has been so much fun. Tune in to my True Detective reviews if you're interested in that. I hope to be taking on some other shows in the future and maybe doing some more music as well. But anyways, as always, I will be back before you know it.